December 23rd, 1944, 22,000 feet over the Rhine River. First Lieutenant Richard Dick Howell gripped his P-51 Mustang's control stick. The 26-year-old American pilot's breath fogged his oxygen mask. Below, German anti-aircraft fire burst in orange blooms. Ahead, something strange appeared. 3 glowing orbs, silver and smooth, moving in tight formation. They didn't look like any plane Howell had ever seen. No wings, no propellers, no exhaust trails. Just perfect spheres, glowing faintly blue at the edges. Howell radioed his wingman. "Tally-ho! Unknown contacts. 2 o'clock. They're not moving like fighters." The orbs darted left, then right, accelerating faster than AP-51 could manage. They circled Howell's formation once, then shot straight up, vanishing into the night. Howell stared after them. He'd heard the rumors. Allied pilots called them Foo Fighters, but he'd never believed them. Now he knew something was out there, something the Germans weren't supposed to have. The Foo Fighters Howell saw were not alien craft. They were the product of Nazi Germany's most secret weapons project, Project Schwalbe 3, Project Swallow 3, a program to build disc-shaped aircraft that could outmaneuver any Allied fighter. Its origins trace back to 1939, when German engineers first began exploring unconventional aircraft designs. At the time, most military planes relied on fixed wings and piston engines. These had limits. They couldn't fly faster than 450 miles per hour, and they struggled at high altitudes. Nazi leaders, obsessed with wonder weapons, wanted something better, something that could strike fear into Allied forces, something that could turn the tide of the war. The man tasked with leading this project was Dr. Rudolf Schriever, a 38-year-old aeronautical engineer. Schriever had worked for Heinkel Aircraft before the war, designing experimental gliders. He was known for his willingness to challenge traditional design rules. In 1939, he was recruited by the Luftwaffe's Secret Weapons Division, the SS Wissenschaftliche Dienst, SS Scientific Service. His orders were clear. Build a disc-shaped aircraft that could fly at 600 miles per hour, climb to 40,000 feet, and carry a 500-pound bomb load. It was a tall order, but Schriever believed it was possible. Schriever's first challenge was the airframe. A disc shape was aerodynamically efficient, but it was also unstable. Traditional wings provided lift and control. A disc had no obvious way to generate either. Schriever's team built small-scale models, testing them in wind tunnels at the Messerschmitt factory in Augsburg. The first model, a 3-foot-wide disc made of aluminum, crashed within seconds of its test flight in March 1940. It spun out of control, unable to maintain stability. The team added small elevons, movable surfaces on the disc's edge, to improve control. The second model, tested in June 1940, flew for 90 seconds before crashing. Progress was slow, but Schriever refused to quit. He argued that the disc shape gave it a unique advantage. It could generate lift from any angle, making it more maneuverable than traditional planes. By 1941, the team had a breakthrough. They designed a disc with a rotating outer rim. The rim would spin at 3,000 revolutions per minute, generating lift through centrifugal force. This would allow the disc to take off vertically, like a helicopter, but fly horizontally like a plane. The inner cockpit would remain stationary, allowing the pilot to control the craft. The team built a full-scale prototype, the V1, which was 20 feet in diameter. It was powered by 3 BMW 003 jet engines mounted on the rotating rim. The first test flight took place on September 14, 1941, at a secret airfield in Bohemia, now the Czech Republic. The V-1 lifted off vertically, hovered for 30 seconds, then flew horizontally at 250 miles per hour. It was a success, but it had flaws. The rotating rim created intense vibration, making it hard for the pilot to see. The jet engines were loud, making the disc easy to detect, and the craft could only fly for 20 minutes before running out of fuel. Schriever's team refined the design. They replaced the BMW engines with a single Junkers Jumo 004B jet mounted in the center of the disc. They added a system to dampen vibration, using rubber gaskets between the rotating rim and the stationary cockpit. They also installed a radar reflective coating on the disc surface to make it harder to spot. The result was the V-2 prototype, tested in March 1942. It could fly at 350 miles per hour, hover for 5 minutes, and climb to 25,000 feet. It was still slower than Allied fighters, but it was more maneuverable. It could turn 180 degrees in 2 seconds, something no P-51 or Spitfire could do. Word of the project reached Adolf Hitler in 1943. He demanded a demonstration. In April 1943, Schriever flew the V-2 to a military airfield outside Berlin. Hitler watched from a viewing stand as the disc hovered, then flew in a tight circle, then shot straight up. Hitler was impressed, but he wanted more. He ordered Schriever to build a combat version, capable of carrying weapons and flying at 600 miles per hour. He gave the project top priority, diverting resources from other weapons programs, including the V-2 rocket. Schriever's team worked around the clock. They expanded the disc diameter to 30 feet to accommodate more fuel and weapons. They added two 20mm MG-151 cannons, mounted in the front of the cockpit. They replaced the Jumo engine with a more powerful Heinkel He-011 jet engine, which produced 2,800 pounds of thrust. The new prototype, the V-3, was tested in August 1943. It reached 480 miles per hour, faster than any Allied fighter at the time. It could climb to 35,000 feet in 8 minutes. It could hover for 10 minutes, allowing to land in small spaces. The only problem was stability. At speeds above 450 miles per hour, the disc would start to vibrate violently. The pilot, test pilot Heinz Kessler, later said, "It felt like riding a tornado. You had to fight the controls every second. But when it worked, it was like nothing else." To fix the stability issue, Schriever's team added small jets on the disc's edge. These thrusters could fire in short bursts, correcting the disc's path when it began to vibrate. The V-4 prototype, tested in December 1943, solved the problem. It flew at 520 miles per hour without vibration. It could turn on a dime, outmaneuvering a Bf-109 in a mock dogfight. It could carry 100 gallons of fuel, giving a range of 300 miles. Schriever was confident. The disc was ready for production, but production was a challenge. Germany's industrial capacity was already stretched thin. The disc required precision manufacturing. Parts had to be machined to tolerances of 0.001 inches. Many of the factories capable of this work were being bombed by Allied planes. The SS assigned slave laborers from concentration camps to work on the project, but they lacked the skills to operate the precision machinery. By early 1944, only 12 V-4 discs had been built. They were assigned to a secret unit, Jägerschwader 12 JG-12, based in Bavaria. The unit's pilots were handpicked. All had extensive combat experience, and all were loyal to the Nazi Party. The first combat mission of the V took place on June 6, 1944, D-Day. 6 discs were scrambled to intercept Allied paratroopers over Normandy. They flew at 500 miles per hour, avoiding Allied fighters. They strafed paratrooper concentrations with their 20mm cannons, killing dozens. They then flew back to Bavaria, undetected. The mission was a success, but had little impact on the D-Day landings. The Allies had too many troops, too many planes. The discs were just a small distraction. As the war dragged on, the discs were used more for reconnaissance and combat. They could fly at high altitude, avoiding radar, and take photos of Allied positions. They were also used to harass Allied bombers. On August 15, 1944, 4 discs intercepted a formation of B-17 bombers over Hamburg. They flew in tight circles around the bombers, disrupting their formation. They didn't fire a single shot, but the bombers were forced to drop their bombs early, missing their targets. Allied pilots called these craft Foo Fighters, a term borrowed from a popular comic strip, and reported dozens of sightings. The U.S. Army Air Forces, USAF, launched an investigation, codenamed Project Sign, but they couldn't determine what the Foo Fighters were. Some thought they were experimental German planes. Others thought they were optical illusions. Schriever's team continued to refine the disc. The V-5 prototype, tested in October 1944, could fly at 600 miles per hour, faster than any Allied plane. It had a range of 500 miles, thanks to larger fuel tanks. It could carry 2 500-pound bombs, making it a viable attack craft. But by this time, Germany was collapsing. Allied forces were advancing from the west and east. The secret airfield in Bavaria was bombed in November 1944, destroying 8 of the 12 V-4 discs. Schriever was ordered to move the project to a bunker in the Austrian Alps. The team loaded the remaining discs and equipment onto trucks and fled. The final test flight of the V-5 took place on January 15, 1945. Test pilot Heinz Kessler flew the disc from the Austrian bunker to a small airfield in Italy. He reached 620 miles per hour, climbed to 40,000 feet, and dropped 2 dummy bombs on an abandoned Allied camp. The mission was a success, but it was too late. Germany had no more troops to support the discs, no more fuel to power them, no more factories to build more. Schriever knew the war was lost. He ordered the team to destroy the remaining discs and burn all design plans. On April 25, 1945, the last V-5 was blown up in the Austrian bunker. The plans were burned in a bonfire. Schriever and his team fled into the mountains, hoping to avoid capture. But they couldn't hide forever. On May 5, 1945, Schriever was captured by American troops near Innsbruck, Austria. He was interrogated for weeks. At first, he refused to talk about the disc project, but when shown photos of Foo Fighter sightings, he broke. He told the Americans about Project Schwab 3, about the V-1 to V-5 prototypes, about the test flights, about the combat missions. He drew diagrams of the disc's design, explaining how the rotating rim generated lift, how the thrusters corrected stability. The Americans were skeptical at first. They couldn't believe the Germans had built such an advanced craft. But when they searched the Austrian bunker, they found fragments of the V-5, pieces of the rotating rim, parts of the 011 engine, bits of the radar reflective coating. The evidence was undeniable. The Americans weren't the only ones interested in Schriever's work. The Soviet Union also captured members of the project team. They found more fragments of the discs in the Bavarian airfield ruins. Both the U.S. and the Soviet Union wanted to learn from the disc's design. They wanted to build their own disc-shaped aircraft. Schriever was taken to the United States, where he worked as a consultant for the U.S. Air Force. He helped design experimental disc-shaped craft, including the Avro Canada VZ-9 Avrocar, a prototype that flew in the 1950s but never entered service. The Soviet Union also built disc-shaped prototypes, but they too failed to produce a viable combat craft. The Foo Fighters sightings continued after the war. In 1947, a pilot reported seeing a disc-shaped craft near Roswell, New Mexico, a sighting that sparked decades of alien conspiracy theories. But most Foo Fighter sightings can be traced back to Schriever's discs. Allied pilots had seen the real thing, experimental German craft, not aliens. The discs were ahead of their time, but they were still imperfect. They were slow to take off. They had limited range, and they were too few in number to affect the war's outcome. But they were a glimpse of what aviation could become. Dr. Rudolf Schriever never returned to Germany. He became a U.S. citizen in 1955 and worked for Boeing Aircraft until his retirement in 1972. He never spoke publicly about Project Schwalbe 3. He was bound by a secrecy agreement with the U.S. government. He died in 1984, his role in creating the Foo Fighters largely forgotten. But his legacy lives on. The disc-shaped aircraft he designed influenced modern aviation. The vertical takeoff and landing VTOL technology he pioneered is used in today's Harrier jump jet and F-35B Lightning II. The radar reflective coating he developed is a precursor to the stealth technology used in the F-117 Nighthawk and B-2 Spirit. Heinz Kessler, the test pilot, returned to Germany after the war. He became a commercial airline pilot and wrote a memoir in 1991, detailing his experiences flying the V-4 and V-5 discs. He described the thrill of flying a craft that could outmaneuver any plane in the sky. He also described the fear, knowing that the disc was experimental, knowing that one small mistake could kill him. Kessler died in 2008, but his memoir remains one of the few first-hand accounts of Project Schwalbe 3. The fragments of the V-5 disc are now stored in the U.S. Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio. They are not on public display. They are classified as sensitive technology. But researchers have studied them, and their findings confirm Schriever's claims. The rotating rim was made of a lightweight aluminum alloy, designed to withstand high speeds. The thrusters were small, jet-powered devices, capable of firing in 0.5-second bursts. The radar reflective coating was a mix of rubber and carbon, designed to absorb radar waves. All of these technologies were revolutionary for their time. The Foo Fighters were not aliens. They were the product of Nazi Germany's desperation, a last-ditch attempt to build a weapon that could win the war. They were imperfect, they were late, and they were ultimately irrelevant to the war's outcome. But they were real. They were a testament to human ingenuity. Even in the darkest of times, they showed what we can achieve when we push the limits of technology, even when that technology is used for destruction. Today, when people talk about UFOs, they often think of aliens. But the first UFOs seen by Allied pilots were not from another planet. They were from Nazi Germany, disc-shaped craft built by engineers who dared to dream of something better. They were a reminder that the most mysterious things in the sky are often the work of human hands. They were a reminder that war drives innovation, for good or for ill. First Lieutenant Richard Howell, the P-51 pilot who saw the Foo Fighters over the Rhine, survived the war. He flew 78 combat missions and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. He never forgot that night in December 1944, the night he saw something that defied explanation. In an interview in 1995, he said, "I didn't know what they were at the time. I thought they might be ghosts. But now I know they were German planes. They were ahead of their time, and they scared the hell out of me." The Foo Fighters are a footnote in World War II history. They didn't win the war for Germany. They didn't change the course of the conflict, but they changed how we think about aviation. They showed that the sky is not limited to fixed-wing planes. They showed that innovation can come from the most unlikely places. They showed that even the most terrible regimes can produce brilliant technology. As we look to the future of aviation, toward hypersonic planes, VTOL craft, and stealth technology, we must remember the Foo Fighters. We must remember the engineers who built them. We must remember the pilots who flew them. We must remember that technology is a tool. It can be used for good or for evil. The Foo Fighters were built to kill, but they also paved the way for planes that save lives, that connect people, that explore the skies. The Foo Fighters were real. They were not aliens. They were a product of human ingenuity, and they will always be a reminder of what we can achieve. Even when the odds are against us,